Welcome, my dear guests, to the captivating expanses of my story. Chapter 9, 2207. Andrea Sauer stood on the bridge of the Ptolemy, her eyes fixed on the majestic yet menacing backdrop of the Apsu system. The pulsating neutron star in the center cast a ghostly light on the surrounding planets and asteroid belts. She took a deep breath and turned to her communications officer. Andrea cleared her throat and gave the communications officer a curt nod. Establish a link to the Imperial Palace. The Imperatrix is awaiting our report. Her voice sounded calm, but her heart hammered against her ribs. Moments later, Sevia Heimber's hologram flickered before her as the Imperatrix materialized out of thin air. The ruler wore a simple but elegant robe of shimmering fabric that seemed to pulsate in the artificial light of the bridge. Her long dark hair was braided into a complex knot reminiscent of a crown. Her piercing blue eyes fixed Andrea with an intensity that could be felt even through the hologram. Commander Sauer, the Imperatrix's voice sounded clear and authoritative, I await your report on the Apsu system. Andrea tightened involuntarily, her spine becoming a column of steel. Your Majesty, we have completed our exploration of the system. The results are... She hesitated briefly, searching for the right words. Fascinating and disturbing at the same time. With a fluid hand movement, she activated the holographic projection. A three-dimensional representation of the Apsu system flashed between them, a swirling miniature universe of light and shadow. At the center is the neutron star Apsu, a massive supernova remnant. Its radiation is intense and dangerous, a cosmic furnace that devours everything in its vicinity. Andrea pointed to the inner planets. The three worlds here are practically magma oceans, constantly reshaped by the relentless gravitational forces of the star. No life as we know it could exist there. Sevia nodded thoughtfully, her eyes following Andrea's explanations. The blue light of the hologram made her face appear even more majestic. And the outer areas? Two massive asteroid belts, Your Majesty. They contain many rare elements, but their chaotic orbits make mining them risky. The two outer planets are ice worlds, also uninhabitable. Andrea hesitated briefly. We've also discovered anomalies, structures on one of the asteroids that don't appear to be of natural origin. Sevia's eyes widened slightly. Alien artifacts? Possibly, Your Majesty. We were unable to examine them more closely for safety reasons. The radiation and the unstable asteroid orbits made it too dangerous to land. The Imperatrix was silent for a moment, her thoughts hidden behind a mask of regal dignity. This is a wise decision, Commander. The safety of your crew is priority. Andrea nodded gratefully. Our next destination is the Wuonjurubal system, Your Majesty. It's connected to Apsu via a hyperlane. What do we know about Wuonjurubal? Not much, Your Majesty. It's a system with a red dwarf star and 5 planets. None of them appear to be habitable at first glance. But after our experiences in Apsu... Andrea left the sentence unfinished. Sevia nodded understandingly. Stay alert, Commander. These unknown systems hold many secrets, and potential dangers. Understood, Your Majesty. We will be leaving shortly. Safe journey, Commander Sauer. May Xerxes watch over you. The hologram went out, and Andrea turned back to the window. The pulsing light of Apsu seemed to taunt her, a cosmic beacon on the edge of the known. She suppressed a shudder and gave the order to leave. The streets of NASA's city vibrated with excitement. Colorful banners fluttered in the wind as the colonists streamed through the streets in their best clothes. The smell of exotic food filled the air, a hint of home in this strange world. Elena Volkov stood on a raised platform in the center of the city. Her gaze swept over the assembled crowd, a sea of expectant faces. The holo transmission flickered briefly before stabilizing and projecting Elena into every home on Citus Sim and Kosch. Clearing her throat, she began in a firm voice, Fellow citizens of Citus Sim, brothers and sisters on Kosch. Today, we celebrate not only the founding day of our colony but also the beginning of a new era for our empire. Her words echoed across the square and through countless holoprojectors throughout the empire. A year ago, we landed here, on this alien world. We faced unknown dangers and a hostile environment. But we did not give up. We fought, worked, and adapted. Elena's eyes sparkled with pride. Look around you. From the wilderness, we have created a thriving city. Our fields bear fruit, and our children laugh and play in safety. This is our home, our legacy for generations to come. The crowd cheered, their enthusiasm spreading like a spark to the spectators on Kasach. Elena raised her hands placatingly. But we must never forget where we come from. Kasach remains our mother planet, our root in the universe. Together, we will grow and prosper, two worlds united under the leadership of our beloved Imperatrix. With these words, Elena bowed slightly and stepped aside. The hologram flickered again, and suddenly Imperatrix Sevia Heimber stood before the gathered crowd, majestic and heavenly as ever. Sevia's piercing blue eyes seemed to look directly at each member of the audience. Her voice was soft but full of authority. My beloved children of Kasach and citizen. Today is a day of pride and joy for our kingdom. She paused, letting her words sink in. What we have achieved here is more than just the founding of a colony. It is proof of the strength and courage of our people. Each of you, whether on citizen or Kasach, is part of this great adventure. Sevia's face became serious. But with great achievements come great responsibilities. We must remain vigilant, humble before the wonders of the universe, and true to our values. The future lies ahead of us, full of opportunities and challenges. Her voice gained strength. Together, we will overcome these challenges. We will explore new horizons and take our empire to unimagined heights. For we are one people, united by our faith, determination, and love for one another. Sevia raised her arms in a gesture of blessing. May Xerxes watch over us all, on citizen and Kasach. May our kingdom flourish and prosper forever. The crowd erupted in thunderous applause, spreading like a wave across both worlds. On the streets of Knossos city and in the halls of Xanadu, the people celebrated, united by the words of their leaders and the bond of two worlds. Emma Hart stood on the bridge of the Ek Azimov, her eyes fixated on the main screen. The surface of Wuonjurubal spread out before her, a barren, lifeless desert of rock and dust. But strange structures stood out in the middle of this desolate landscape, too regular to be of natural origin. Dr. Novak, what are we seeing here? Emma asked, her voice strained with excitement. Her fingers drummed nervously on the armrest of her command chair. The chief scientist stepped up next to her, his eyes darting over the data on his tablet. A slight tremor in his hands betrayed his excitement. It looks like artificial constructs, Commander. Geometric shapes that stand out clearly from the natural topography. Perfect circles, squares, even something that looks like a pyramid. Emma nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the strange patterns on the screen. Lieutenant Zhang, increase the scan intensity. I want every detail of this anomaly captured. Concentrate especially on the areas with the most conspicuous structures. Yes, Commander, Zhang replied, his fingers flying over the controls. The soft hum of scanning systems filled the bridge as the Ek Azimov pointed its sensitive sensors at the surface of Wuonjurubal. Dr. Asha Singh, the team's xenoarchaeologist, stepped forward. Her eyes shone with excitement, and she could hardly stand still. These structures could be ancient. Can you see the traces of weathering? The rounded edges, the partially crumbled walls? We could be talking about millennia if not millions of years. The planet's atmosphere must have eroded these structures over an unimaginably long time. Emma turned to her crew. Ladies and gentlemen, we may be on the verge of one of the most significant discoveries in the history of Kasach. I want each of you to give this anomaly your full attention. She turned to the communications officer. Establish a link to the main research institute in Xanadu. Priority 1. While the officer made the connection, Emma discussed the possible implications of her discovery with her crew. Dr. Novak speculated about the builder's technological capabilities, while Dr. Singh was already developing theories about their culture. Connection established, Commander, reported the communications officer. Emma stepped in front of the communications screen. The face of Professor Alexandra Ivanova, the head of the institute, appeared. Professor Ivanova, we have detected an anomaly on Wuonjurubal. Artificial structures on the surface. I am now transmitting the coordinates and our preliminary scans to you. Ivanova's eyes widened when she received the data. This is extraordinary, Commander Hart. We'll assemble a team immediately. Emma nodded. Understood. We'll continue to observe and map the anomaly from orbit. Landing would be too risky at this stage. Agreed. Please keep us informed, Commander. Xanadu out. When the connection was broken, Emma turned back to her crew. Let's get to work. I want a detailed map of these structures. Every stone, every line, everything documented. The archaeologists on Kasach will love us for this. The crew set to work with zeal, fueled by the excitement of their discovery. Emma watched them with a sense of pride. She knew this was just the beginning. The secrets of Wuonjurubal were waiting to be revealed. Emma Hart stood on the bridge of the Ek Asimov and looked one last time at the holographic representation of the Wuonjurubal system. The three stars danced in a complex ballet, surrounded by their planetary families. A feeling of melancholy came over her as she thought about leaving this fascinating system. Dr. Novak, summarize our findings, Emma asked her chief scientist. Liam Novak stepped up next to her, his tablet in his hand. We've collected extensive data on the dynamics of the triple system, Commander. The gravitational interactions between the stars are more complex than anything we've seen before. The effects on planet formation and evolution are fascinating. Emma nodded appreciatively. And the anomaly on Wuonjurubal? The artificial structures remain mysterious, Novak replied. Our scans indicate a highly developed civilization that must have existed millions of years ago. The traces of erosion are impressive. Good, Dr. Singh, what is your archaeological report? Asha Singh stepped forward, her eyes shining with excitement. The building shapes and arrangements suggest a highly complex society, Commander. We have evidence of ritual structures, possibly astronomical observatories. The question is, what happened to this civilization? Emma sighed deeply, her gaze wandering over the holographic representations of the Wuonjurubal system. So many questions loomed, but time was pressing relentlessly. She straightened her shoulders and turned to her communications officer. Lieutenant Zhang, establish a link to the Imperial Palace. We need to inform the Imperatrix before we leave. Priority 1. Zhang nodded curtly, and his fingers flew over the controls. Moments later, the life-size hologram of Sevia Heimber flickered into view on the bridge, surrounded by a faint, bluish glow. The Imperatrix looked as majestic as ever, her upright posture radiating a natural authority. Her piercing blue eyes fixed on Emma, looking straight into her soul. Commander Hart, Sevia said in a calm but firm voice. I await your report on the exploration of the Wuonjurubal system. Emma swallowed briefly, collecting her thoughts. In a clear voice, she summarized the most important findings of her mission. She emphasized the groundbreaking scientific breakthroughs regarding the gravitational dynamics of the triple system and its effects on planet formation. She stresses the discovery of the mysterious ruins on Wuonjurubal, speculating cautiously about their possible origin and age. Sevia listened attentively, her face a mask of regal dignity. When Emma had finished, she nodded slowly. Impressive work, Commander. These discoveries will expand our understanding of the universe. What are your next steps? With your permission, Your Majesty, we would like to set course for the Massinissa's demise system. The reports about the black hole there and the shattered world promise further fascinating insights. Sevia thought for a moment. Agreed, Commander Hart. But be careful. The dangers in this system should not be underestimated. Understood, Your Majesty. We will exercise extreme caution. The hologram went out, and Emma turned to her crew. You have heard it. Set a course for Massinissa's demise. Chief Engineer Volkov, I want the shields to have maximum power. Dr. Novak, prepare the sensors for intensive radiation readings. The crew set to work with enthusiasm. Emma could feel the excitement spreading on the bridge. The next big adventure awaited them. Course set, Commander, reported the navigation officer. Ready to jump to your command. Emma took a deep breath. Energize. The stars outside the viewport blurred into streaks of light as the Ek Asimov plunged into hyperspace on its way to discoveries and dangers. Nadine Heimber walked with measured steps through the high halls of the Helix Temple in Xanadu. The heavy robes rustled softly with each step. Her face was a mask of concentration as she entered the High Council of Genetic Guardians Hall. The church superiors were already waiting for her, their faces a mixture of seriousness and barely veiled concern. The room was filled with a palpable tension that settled over those present like an invisible fog. Nadine walked with dignified composure to the head of the massive stone table, its polished surface reflecting the flickering light of the candles. She let her penetrating gaze wander over those gathered, fixing on each individual for a brief moment. "Brothers and sisters," she began in a firm voice that echoed off the stone walls, "the discoveries of Emma Hart present us with formidable challenges. The believers in Sim are doubting, their faith in the sacred teachings of the Helix fading like morning dew in the sun." Murmurs of agreement filled the room, as well as a low murmur of concern and anger. The priests and priestesses exchanged worried glances. One of the older priests, his face deeply furrowed, rose slowly. His voice sounded rough as he asked, "What do you suggest, Sister Nadine? How can we put a stop to this decay?" Nadine folded her hands thoughtfully on the table, her fingers intertwined like the strands of a DNA helix. Her eyes sparkled with a mixture of determination and divine fire. "We must massively increase our presence on Sim," she declared emphatically. "A Gen monastery will be established, a beacon of faith in the midst of doubt, to bring the stray sheep back to the fold." Those present nodded in agreement. Nadine continued, "But that alone will not be enough. We have to fight on two fronts." She leaned forward, her voice becoming insistent. "We must use our influence in the Imperial Senate. The exploration of space must be slowed. Every discovery further undermines our teachings." A young priest ventured an objection. "But the Imperatrix supports the research missions. How can we oppose that?" Nadine smiled thinly. "With caution and wisdom, young brother. We will not speak openly against expansion. Instead, we will emphasize the risks and the costs. We will subtly sow seeds of doubt." She turned back to the entire gathering. "On Sim, we must win back the people's hearts. Next to the monastery, we will erect sacred objects. Monuments that remind us of the greatness and wisdom of the Helix." Nadine stood up, her figure seemed to fill the room. "It will be a challenge, but we will not fail. Genetic purity must be preserved, whatever the cost." The assembled priests and priestesses joined in a soft chant that slowly swelled and filled the room. Nadine closed her eyes momentarily, letting the power of faith flow through her. When the last note had faded, she opened her eyes again. "Go now," she said in a firm voice. "Prepare everything. I will take care of the Senate." The assembly dispersed, the priests and priestesses leaving the hall with renewed zeal and determination. Nadine remained alone for a moment, her gaze fixed in the distance. Emma Hart clung to the armrests of her captain's chair as the Ek Asimov jumped out of hyperspace into Massanissa's demise system. The ship shuddered as it plunged into standard space. Immediately, chaotic data flooded the bridge screens. "Status report," barked Emma, her eyes darting over the flickering displays. Lieutenant Zhang struggled with his controls. "Sensors jammed, Captain. The black hole is distorting our readings." Emma gritted her teeth. She had expected complications, but the reality exceeded her fears. The gravitational pull of the colossal celestial body was tugging at the Ek Asimov, threatening to throw it off course. "Stabilizers at maximum," Emma ordered. "Correct our orbit." The engines howled as the ship struggled against the gravitational pull. Emma felt her guts tighten, and sweat beat at her forehead. Dr. Novak leaned towards her. "The radiation is stronger than expected. Our shields are holding, but the instruments are going crazy." Emma nodded grimly. "Concentrate on the calibration. We need to adjust the sensors." Minutes passed like hours. The crew worked feverishly, adjusting systems and filtering the chaos of data. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the image on the screen stabilized. "I've got something," Dr. Singh suddenly shouted. "It's an artificial structure orbiting the outermost planet." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "Confirm that." Zhang nodded. "Confirmed. Not a natural object." A reverent hush fell over the bridge. Emma stared at the screen, which now showed a strange construction, angular, asymmetrical, entirely unlike anything she had ever seen. "My goodness," whispered Dr. Novak. "That's alien." Emma swallowed hard. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the communication channel. "Hard to cost. Priority 1. We have contact." Emma Hart stared transfixed at the main screen of the Ek Asimov. Her heartbeat quickened as the ship's sensors detected the unmistakable signs of an alien presence in Massanissa's demise system. An outpost of unknown design hovered in orbit around one of the planets, its alien structures standing out clearly against the cosmic backdrop. "Zhang, confirm the readings," Emma ordered, her voice strained with suppressed excitement. Lieutenant Zhang leaned over his console, his fingers flying over the controls. "Confirmed, Captain. The signature is not human in origin." Emma nodded curtly. "Establish a quantum link to the Imperial Senate. Highest priority." While the communications officers hastily set up the connection, Emma let her gaze wander over the bridge. The tension was palpable, every facial muscle of her crew tense with concentration and a mixture of fear and fascination. The hologram of the Senate chamber flickered into existence, the faces of the assembled senators showing a mixture of shock and disbelief as Emma delivered her report. Imperatrix Sevia Heimber stood up, her face a mask of controlled calm. "Captain Hart, your discovery is invaluable. We must proceed with extreme caution." The Imperatrix turned to a woman on her right. "Joanna Fritsch, I task you with making contact. Find out the motivation of these strangers. Until we know more, we will classify them as a RO threat." Joanna Fritsch nodded gravely. "I understand, Your Highness. I will do my best to discover this unknown species' intentions." Emma watched the scene with bated breath. The tension in her chest grew. She had been waiting for this moment all her life, her first contact with an alien intelligence. But at the same time, responsibility weighed heavily on her shoulders. One wrong step could have catastrophic consequences for the whole of humanity. Dr. Chao Siku Uba stood at the edge of the vast excavation site on the moon of Sidus 4. The Ek Ibn Battuta hovered above her like a protective angel in the sky. Her eyes wandered over the exposed structures that stretched out before her. A calm wind tugged at her protective suit. "Fascinating," she murmured and activated her recording device. "The architectural styles are clearly different. Two different species were living side by side here." Chao Siku walked carefully across the dusty floor, leaving footprints alongside the countless others that the excavation team had left behind in recent weeks. She stopped in front of an imposing building whose curved lines stood out clearly from the angular structures next to it. The 9 Ardians seemed to have coexisted peacefully with their hosts, she spoke into her recorder. No signs of conflict or demarcation between living areas. Her gaze fell on a series of symbols chiseled into the wall of the building. She frowned and stepped closer. "Interesting. These inscriptions are similar to those in the Helix archives on Kasach. Could this be an indication of..." "No, I must not be hasty." Chao Siku forced herself to take a step back. She had to remain objective, at least on the outside. But inside her, things began to bubble. This discovery could change everything. She activated her communication device. "Dr. Uba, to the research team. I need a detailed analysis of the inscriptions in Sector 7 as a high priority." While she waited for the answer, Chao Siku let her gaze wander over the peaceful scene. Two cultures were living together in harmony, almost too good to be true. The ruins stretched far into the distance, silently witnessing past greatness. Maybe, she thought, maybe the 9 Ardians were genetically pure enough to be accepted by their hosts. Or maybe they shared similar beliefs to our Helix doctrine. The idea made her heart beat faster. What if they had stumbled upon the roots of their own beliefs here? She shook her head. She couldn't let her personal beliefs guide her. Not here, not now. But the possibilities. She forced herself to keep a clear head, but her thoughts swelled. "Dr. Uba," her communicator crackled. "We have the first results of the inscription analysis." Her assistant's voice sounded excited, almost breathless. Chao Siku took a deep breath, trying to hide her growing tension. "I'm listening." Her voice sounded calmer than she felt. "It seems to be a kind of religious text. We can't fully decipher it yet, but it's about genetic purity and..." The assistant paused briefly as if searching for the right words. Chao Siku's heart leapt. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the communicator tighter. Her fingernails were digging into her palms, and the tension was almost unbearable. "Genetic purity?" She interrupted the assistant. "Are you sure?" "Yes, Dr. Uba. The translation is still preliminary, but this concept appears several times." Chao Siku closed her eyes for a moment. Her mind raced. This couldn't be a coincidence. Why is the Helix doctrine in an alien city thousands of years old? Myra Gupta sat in her office on Kasach, surrounded by holographic displays showing data and statistics from Citisim. She activated the quantum communication link, and the image of Elena Volkov flickered before her. "Elena, how are things going in Knossos City?" Myra asked as she scanned the latest population figures. Her fingers tapped nervously on the armrest of her chair, a sign of her inner tension. Elena Volkov appeared in the hologram, her face marked by deep furrows that bore witness to the strain of the last few months. She brushed an unruly strand of hair from her forehead and nodded briefly. "We are growing steadily, Myra. 1 million people now live here in the city and the surrounding area. It is impressive and challenging at the same time." Her voice sounded rough as if she hadn't slept enough lately. Myra leaned back in her armchair, her brow furrowed. She chewed thoughtfully on her lower lip. "And the infrastructure? Will it hold up?" Her eyes reflected concern for the well-being of the colonists. "So far, yes," Elena replied, nervously tugging at her uniform collar. "We still have the capacity for another 1 million. But we have to plan. Resources are running out," she sighed softly, the weight of responsibility visible in her posture. Myra nodded thoughtfully, her gaze drifting to the reports on her desk. She had studied the data on the rich deposits on Citisim several times. It was an opportunity they could not afford to miss, and her heart beat faster at the thought of the opportunities that lay before them. "Elena, I have a suggestion. Or rather, an instruction." Myra's voice became firmer. "We need to set up a mining facility. The scans show huge deposits of rare earths. This could be a game changer for us." Elena's eyebrows raised slightly. "Mining? That won't please some of the colonists. Many have come here to escape industrialization." Myra waved it off. I know. But think of the bigger picture. These resources could make Citisim a key planet for the entire empire. Plus, we'll attract miners from Kasach, experienced people who know what they're doing." Elena sighed but then nodded. "Understood. Where should we start?" Myra activated a 3D map of Knossos City and the surrounding area. "Here, about 50 kilometers east of the city. The scans show the highest concentration there. We'll start with a medium-sized facility, expandable as needed." "And the environmental impact?" asked Elena, concern in her voice. "It will be minimal," Myra assured her. "We use the latest technology. There will be no open pits, only precision drilling and extraction. The surface will remain largely untouched." Elena nodded slowly. "All right. I'll get the preparations underway. But Myra, we must proceed with caution. The atmosphere here is sensitive." "I understand," Myra said. "Communicate it as an opportunity, new jobs, prosperity for the colony. Ensure the colonists understand this is their project, not just an order from Kasach." "I will," Elena replied. "Anything else?" Myra shook her head. "That's it for now. Keep me posted, Elena. And good work so far. I know it's not easy." Elena smiled tiredly. "Thank you, Myra. We're doing the best we can out here." The hologram faded, and Myra leaned back, her eyes fixed on the data. She hoped she had made the right decision. The future of Citisim, and perhaps the entire empire, could depend on it. The Imperial Senate of Kasach gathered for an extraordinary session on September 1, 2207. The high vaults of the Senate building echoed with arriving senators' murmurs. Myra Gupta, the sector governor of Citisim, entered the chamber with a data crystal in her hand. Her face beamed with pride as she took her place at the podium. "Honorable Senators, Imperatrix Sevia," Myra began her speech. "It gives me great pleasure to inform you that the outpost expansion in the Citis system has been completed. The new starport now stands in full splendor above Citisim." A murmur went through the ranks. Senator Voss leaned forward in his chair, his eyes narrowed. "And how much did this magnificent building cost us, Governor Gupta?" Myra activated a holographic projection of the starport. The complex structure hovered over the center of the hall, slowly rotating. "The investment was considerable, certainly. But the return will exceed our wildest expectations. This starport will boost the economy of the entire Citis system." Admiral Paulina Romero nodded approvingly, her steel-gray eyes sparkling with tactical calculation. The strategic importance should not be underestimated. With this base, we are securing our position in the sector and creating a bridgehead for future operations. The Pegasus flotilla will be able to patrol more effectively from here. Nadine Heimber, representative of the Helix Church, rose from her seat. Her pale face was a mask of concern, the lines around her eyes deepening. And what about the cultural implications? We are opening the door to foreign influences. The genetic purity of our people could be at risk. Have we taken precautions to protect our sacred traditions? Myra smiled reassuringly, her voice gentle but firm. The starport will be under strict control, Sister Nadine. We have developed protocols to uphold our traditions as we open new horizons. All contact with strangers will be closely monitored and documented. The Helix Church will be involved in all decisions. Imperatrix Sevia Heimber, silent until now, straightened up on her throne. Her piercing blue eyes fixed on Myra. Her voice sounded calm but authoritative. Tell us about the specific economic forecasts, Governor. How will this starport affect our empire, in facts and figures? Myra projected a series of charts. Our analysts expect a 30% increase in trade volume in the first year. The improved infrastructure will attract investors. We anticipate creating at least 10,000 new jobs on Citisim. Senator Alexei Kuznetsov, representative of the Mining Guild, rubbed his hands together. We can finally exploit the system's resources efficiently. It's time for our investments to pay off. Emma Hart, connected by hologram from the Ek Asimov, spoke up. The scientific benefits must not be forgotten. We can significantly expand our research missions with the starport as a base. The discussion went back and forth. Senators heatedly debated the opportunities and risks. Myra stood calmly at the podium, answering questions and explaining details. After hours of intense discussion, Imperatrix Sevia stood up. The room fell silent immediately. The starport in the Citus system marks a milestone in the expansion of our empire, she announced. It holds great opportunities but also responsibilities. We must be vigilant and act wisely. Hey, I would be happy if you could give my video a like, leave a comment and subscribe to my channel to stay up to date.